Relative to the start of the pandemic, so about 5 years, rents are up 48%, which is pretty wild growth over 5 years. What that means is rental affordability across Australia is at its lowest level we've ever seen.
Where are conditions the toughest?
So New South Wales is where renters are facing the worst affordability, which probably won't come as a surprise to anyone. Sydney's a very expensive rental market, always has been. Sydney is pretty much always the least affordable market. But actually, the gaps to many of the other states are not particularly large. South Australia is in second position now, which may come as a surprise to some people. But the gaps between South Australia, Western Australia, Queensland, they're all pretty similar and very unaffordable. Victoria is really the only state that stands out, where affordability is, relatively speaking, quite a lot better, and not actually at its worst ever level. It's the only state for which that's true.
Can you talk us through the affordability challenges for different income households?
Yeah, so we're out today with our rental affordability report, and one of the nice things that it does is look at affordability right across the income distribution, not just for average or typical income households. That said, it is a nice way to kind of get a handle on where affordability is at. And so, for a typical income household, about $116,000 a year, they can only afford in the order of about 36% of rentals at the moment, which is pretty low. For low income households, in the order of $70,000, effectively no rentals are currently affordable, 2%, which is very, very challenging. So it is very challenging for those lower income households at the moment.
And so you mentioned typical income households. How much income are some households, such as those earning $116,000 a year, having to devote to keeping a roof over their heads?
So when we measure affordability here, we're talking about devoting 25% of your pre-tax income. It's just a rough rule of thumb. Many households will be spending more than that, particularly in the current environment, given that only about 36% of rentals meet that criteria. So many households will be spending quite a bit more than that. And that's particularly going to be true for lower income households for whom it's effectively impossible to find a rental spending any less than 30 to 35% of their income.
And so does that mean that the pace of rental increases differs in different markets? For example, those lower rentals must be increasing more quickly in price.
Yeah, that's right. One of the perhaps underappreciated features of the rental crisis that we're seeing and how challenging affordability is we've actually seen stronger growth in rents at the more affordable end of the market. Part of the story there is that it's the traditionally affordable markets, Adelaide, Perth, to some extent Brisbane, that used to be relatively affordable that have seen the really strong growth in recent years, while more expensive markets like Sydney and Melbourne haven't seen as strong. But even within cities, it is the case that the more affordable end has seen stronger growth.
We have seen the RBA begin the cutting cycle. Are there implications for renters if more renters do become homeowners?
Yeah, one of the perhaps surprising things we've seen in the past 12 to 18 months is that there are still quite a lot of first home buyers being successful, which is pretty remarkable in an environment in which housing affordability is also incredibly challenging. And we've seen more successful first home buyers than we were through the 2010s. And it's hard not to think that part of the reason for that is, for those that can, the fact that rental markets are so challenging is encouraging them to make the jump sooner. And so, some cash rate cuts that are going to start to improve housing affordability will certainly help for first home buyers, for whom servicing a mortgage and how much they can borrow is very often the constraint for what they can afford to buy. And
so there'll be implications then for renters?
Potentially, having fewer first home buyers or first home buyers coming out of the rental market could make it a little bit less competitive. But of course, those first home buyers are buying from someone, and often they will be buying an ex-investment property, so it can end up being a bit of a swap one for one. That said, what it does is change the composition of the rental market. You're taking out the higher income renters, who are most likely to be first home buyers, and you're left with the lower income renters. And that kind of highlights the challenges for affordability and the importance of support for those lower income renters.
Angus Moore, great to speak to you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, Kirsten.